It's a war movie about our nature, about how we are drawn into conflict. You know, about how we lose our capacity for empathy for each other, and that leads to conflict. It makes it much easier to kill an adversary who you don't imagine is like you, and the story is meant to draw you into that idea and to implicate you in that, because you, along with Caesar, want revenge, and then at a certain point you start to realize the folly of that, and in that sense, I guess it is an anti-war film in that sense. It's about really the nature of war, and really war as it relates to human nature. The story is supposed to be about human nature, and Caesar's strength has always been his empathy, and we wanted this story to grow out of the last film. And at the end of the last film, Caesar, throughout the last film, was trying to broker peace. That's what he wanted above all, and yet he failed. And as the story begins, he's looking back and trying to understand how he failed, and he wasn't able to understand how wounded Koba was in the last film, in that he was incapable of living alongside humans because he had been so wounded by them, and Caesar's experience was not the same. So at the beginning of the film, he asked Maurice, he goes, "Why couldn't I see?" And Maurice is like, "Well, you couldn't have known the darkness that was living inside of him." And the idea was to push him to a place where he would, in his own way, experience the same kind of darkness, the same kind of emotional injury from humans that Koba had experienced. And the question is, would he pass that test and be able to transcend his hatred, his desire for revenge, or would he be consumed and destroyed the way Koba was? And that seemed like the right subject for the movie. Well, I think that in reality the difference is significant, but we are actually more similar, I think, than people acknowledge. But in the story, the very point of the apes is that they're us. The fantasy of the film is that these apes are becoming intelligent, and one of the things I think that we always forget is that we are animals. We are apes, actually. And as such, the story is trying to find a way for the audience to go on a journey where for 2 hours they become apes. It's a very point of view driven story, so that you start to relate most significantly to Caesar and to the characters around him. And so it's meant to hold a mirror up to who we are. The story is fundamentally about human nature, and Caesar is becoming more and more human. Interestingly, this is in a way the most human depiction of his character, in that he gets drawn into circumstances so extreme that for the first time he's losing empathy and he wants revenge, which is actually, you know, apes are capable of empathy just as we are. And one thing, though, that is a very human concept is this notion of being wounded to the point of desiring revenge. And so that's the irony of the story, that some of the darkest impulses are the most human impulses. I think the most important question of the story is how can the characters maintain a level of empathy and understanding for each other, so that they can see, despite all the differences, the commonality between each other. And it's quite a struggle, and that, I think, is the struggle that we're engaged in. I think the more that we can look at other populations as if their lives don't matter, as if they're lesser than us, as if they're not equal to us, we're going to continue to spiral down into the depths of conflict that hopefully, you know, this is the thing about human nature. We have a capacity for greatness and goodness, and we also have a capacity for the darker sides of our nature, and that lead us into terrible atrocity. And you want to believe that the good will out, that good will win, and I certainly hope it will. And this story is about that. I don't actually. I just learned it today. However, I think if I were to speculate, I would guess that it would be to say that the story is certainly about conflict, but the survival aspect of it sort of points to the aspirational side, because the characters are it is about what it takes to survive. And in some cases, what it takes to survive is quite disturbing and dark. In other cases, it's about how the characters come together in order to survive. And so in that way, maybe it is to encompass not just the dark that war implies, but also the potential of the light. I guess I would guess that that's what it was, but I didn't come up with the title, so I don't really know.